Hey everyone, how you doing? This is just a quick update on some developments in the past couple weeks, past couple days as it turns out as well. First, I'm going to be presenting and performing at the Flagstaff Folk Festival on June 14th. And I'm going to be presenting. I got a really great slot. I'm going to be on the indoor presentation stage at 12:30 talking about Roll Your Own House Concert Tour. We'll get back to that in a minute and we'll talk a little bit about house concerts and kind of my ideas there. And really booking any tour, just some general ideas. And then the second thing is I'll be performing at 3:30 in the Gregg cabin, and I'll have links to all the information down in the description. I was also asked to perform as a featured artist at next Tuesday out in Woodland Hills near my house. As part of 2 Tuesdays is the event. It's a monthly event, a songwriter night. They kind of start with an open mic and then they feature 3 artists. So I'll be the final artist of the night, kind of the featured artist, I guess. He said that's the longest slot. We'd really like you to take that. So super excited about that. It kind of falls in line with my prior video on the kinds of gigs I want to do, which are songwriter, listening room venue, not doing 3 hours of cover songs or whatever the case may be, but really focused on just my music and a show or a performance centered on my songs. We have a second thing we're doing as well that Deb and I started last weekend. I'll show a couple pictures as we go through this, but we're going to put together a booklet. This will be volume 1, or a book, I guess a small book, where we're going to juxtapose some lyrics or lyric snippets, not an entire song, kind of done in a nice font, laid out nicely, opposite her photography. And some of that photography will be of moi, but some of it will just be photography she's done, some black and whites that are interesting or might convey an emotional feel that relates to the lyrics. It doesn't have to be directly tied to the lyrics as much as capturing an emotional essence. And so we'll talk about more of that in the next few weeks. But in either case, that's kind of what we're working on. Those are the big updates. I'm going to talk a little bit about Flagstaff Folk Festival. I have not performed or visited the Flagstaff Folk Festival since I think 2008. I think I performed there in 2007 and 2008. I missed 2009 and then just never had a chance to go back. And love Flagstaff. As a matter of fact, this will be Deb's first opportunity to see. We plan on making a little bit of a trip of it. So we're going to see Sedona. We'll see some of Phoenix, where I used to live. I just kind of want to show her that background. It's where I started performing. I wrote about it in one of my prior pieces about really kicking off, writing songs in earnest and performing. But Flagstaff Folk Festival, like I say, house concerts, how that all got started is back in 2008 or so. I was starting to play out a lot in Phoenix. I'd started writing a lot more in 2006, a ton more in 2007, and performing out a bit. And then in 2008, I was really getting ready to do, I'd kind of taken this step back and said, why am I not doing the things for my music that I would do as a consultant or recommend as a consultant to another business? And so I put together a website and I started recording and started creating flyers, handouts, merchandise, t-shirts, things like that. And one of the things that happened is I had the opportunity, spoke to somebody who does house concerts in New Mexico. And we started discussing dates, and here's what I found out, particularly at established venues. Nothing wrong with those. Those are awesome. I've done a couple of them, but this was a house concert venue that was in New Mexico, and I was getting ready to play in Albuquerque, and I said, great, if I can swing through town and do the house concert and then do my gig in Albuquerque, that kind of gives me 2 gigs in New Mexico. And then I found out where they were pushing dates back almost a year, 2 years, and I started to figure out how the numbers work with house concerts, and this kind of became an issue and set me on a path to seek a better way or to have more agency or control. And it also related to my ideas of what a tour should be. We were discussing these dates being pushed back, and I realized that for any established house concert venue or people that put on house concerts, maybe they do 6, if they're super busy, 10 house concerts a year. But we're going to say 6 to 8 house concerts maybe. And even that's pretty busy. And if they do that, you have to understand that they probably have between 10 to 25 performers that they love. And particularly their favorite performers, they're going to book those people every year. So several slots are already taken. That's why they might be booked out 2 years down the road before you can get in there. So you have to both make the connection, they have to like your music, and then they have to fit you in with all their other favorites. And that can be a bit of a challenge. It really became a hindrance to putting together what I consider a tour. So when we talk about a tour is geographically and chronologically sequential, right? You have to have this sequence of places you're playing that make sense. You know, you don't want to drive to Phoenix and do a show and drive back to Los Angeles and then drive to Colorado and do a show and then drive back. That's not a tour. A tour is you play in Phoenix one night, you play in Tucson the next night, or let's turn it around, let's say Tucson, then Phoenix, then maybe you play in Flagstaff, then maybe you play in Albuquerque. It's got to have some sequential bearing. So that was the first thing. I realized that you can't really form a tour around some of these established house concert venues. About that time I was searching just information online about house concerts, and I saw this guy, Kevin Montgomery, and he used to do this 50 states in 50 days tour. And he had videos showing him driving from place to place and putting on house concerts where he was playing sometimes in the hallway of a building and there were 15, 20 people there and some, you know, whatever it was. So I reached out to him, we had a conversation, and he said, look, you know, getting into those places, same thing I had discovered, he goes, getting into those established house concerts kind of puts you at a disadvantage. You're not in control of the dates that you're going to set. And his recommendation was reach out to your mailing list if you have it, look for recommendations, select a set of cities that you want to go to, and then reach out and just book those days and be very direct about the time that you're going to be there. If you're going to be there on a Tuesday night, that's the night you can play, rather than kind of, oh, do you have an opening? Can I play then? Because you can't really plan anything. And that all hinges around the idea of having what we call an anchor date. And so that's a date where you know you've got something set up on some city down the road. So for me, the first big house concert I did was in Chicago. I had a friend who contacted me and said, hey, we want to have you come out here and play. We see that you're promoting the idea you're going to play in people's homes and do house concerts. So they wanted to bring me out there, and they were actually going to pay to fly me out there and guarantee the money I'd make, at least a minimum, which was totally cool. I decided, instead of flying out there and doing a show at their house, that I was going to drive across the country and do that. But that gave me an anchor date. And then I simply worked backwards and said, if I'm leaving on this date and that date, kind of give myself places that I was going to drive through on the way there. And then I reached out to people I knew on Facebook and elsewhere. I looked for recommendations and ultimately got it set up where I think we played every night of the week, except for maybe one night. It was a little bit exhausting, but it was awesome. And went across country and then planned dates coming back. Most of those were house concerts. People that opened up their home, let me sleep there, which is super nice, right? Gave me a bed so I didn't have to pay for a hotel, as well as a place to play. And I did that for a few years, where I would go a couple times a year. I would go out to Chicago and back, and then we ultimately got as far as, I think, Toledo or something and back. So we kind of extended things a little bit. That was hugely fun, and one of the reasons that house concerts are such a great gig for songwriters is it's a true listening room environment. It's where people are coming there just for music. And if you think about the financials compared to, say, a bar gig or playing cover tunes somewhere, you might make some money at one of those gigs, but I was averaging probably just on donations. That's how we did all of these. They were purely donation based, meaning there was no ticket price. I had no guarantee of the money I was going to make. But even if there were 10 people there, where I played in St. Louis a couple times and there were maybe 10, 12 people at this one place, so not a whole lot of people, but I got about $30 per person in addition to whatever, or not counting whatever merchandise I had, some t-shirts I sold and things like that. So $30 a person with 10 people, you're talking $300. Yeah, I'm not going to retire on that money. But It paid for gas, certainly. It covered all of that. So the bigger benefit is that these people are there to listen to music. So they get on your mailing list and they become an avenue potentially for other house concerts. In any case, I'm going to go into it a little more depth when I get to Flagstaff, and I'm hoping to videotape that entire presentation, including a little slide deck that will be able to show people kind of how you might plan out a tour, some of the promotional pieces I put together as well. And then just to reiterate, Deb and I are starting a project where we're going to go out today, as a matter of fact. I have some recording to do and some other stuff, but we're going to do a photo shoot looking for interesting shots that we can include in this book, and I'm going to include the two that we have right now that are just kind of interesting. We don't know if both will be used or how we're going to do it, but these were, we were driving into downtown LA. I think we were in the Elysian Heights, Silver Lake area, and we saw this dilapidated storefront that had kind of these bright yellow columns, and went down the sidewalk, and then it had this graffiti in the front under this marquee. We kind of played with that. We had watched a video of Alan Shallers, he's a photographer, and he was showing motion blur photos where the person you're photographing is walking behind some kind of background where you want the motion blur and the movement to appear, and you pan with them. You use a pretty slow shutter speed, and then you pan with the person as they're walking or riding a bike or a car. It's the same kind of technique. Based on the speed of the person or the car or whatever, you set your shutter speed accordingly, and you can really create these cool effects. So the picture that I show you now, that was in front of that storefront, kind of walking under the marquee, which you can't really tell. And then the other pictures, there was a mirror up on the marquee columns that kind of was one of those mirrors you use to see around the corner so you don't run into somebody or whatever. And we use that where I position myself back at the wall, and Deb kind of took a picture of the bottom of the mirror where you see some of the column, but you also see this mirror. So it's really kind of an odd, interesting looking picture, and we kind of liked it. We may go back and reshoot there again because we thought it was pretty cool, and we'll see how those come out. But we're going to go out today to another spot and take some other photos. So that's my update. Once again, performing next Tuesday as a featured artist at 2 Tuesdays, Rib Ranch Barbecue in Woodland Hills. And then I'll be at the Flagstaff Folk Festival presenting at 12:30, and then performing at the Gregg Cabin at 3:30. And if you're in the Flagstaff area, Arizona, would love to see you. Other than that, have a good one. We'll be back at you soon. See ya.